6 arguments for the existence of the soul. And as the subtitle says, this is a philosophical defense of dualism. In other words, what I'm going to try to demonstrate to you is that human beings have 2 substances. We are both natural and supernatural. There's a physical and a non-physical part of us. And so that's what dualism means. It means that we have 2 substances. And so that's what we're going to look at. And it's going to be 6 individual arguments for the existence of the soul. Now here's my encouragement to you, provided that you're not a student of mine. If you're a student of mine, you need to know this stuff. But, well, I guess even if you are a student of mine at this point, what I want you to do is listen to all of the arguments and try your best to remember one of them. Whichever one makes the most sense to you, whichever one seems the most reasonable to you, I want you to pick that one. And if you're ever having a discussion about this subject, then you've always got a go-to argument. Even if you can't explain it with the precise words that I'm going to use here, at least know the gist of it. Now, if you are in my class currently, you're actually going to have to know it verbatim. So, but everybody else, just kind of get a feel for it, and what I hope this will do is give you a nice defense. Now, these are not the only arguments for the existence of the soul. And we could actually look at other types of evidence, but we're going to keep this in the area of philosophy for the most part. So none of these are foolproof. That is, none of these will just win the day for you. But these, at the very least, are arguments that would get people thinking about the subject and maybe reevaluating the idea that our mind is merely our brain. There are good reasons to believe that our minds are something more than our brains. And so that's what we're going to look at. Now, we got to begin really basic here. And what I'm going to put up in this next slide, at first you're going to say to yourself, well, this is really easy. Why are you even bothering? But it'll make sense in just a second. So hear me out. We're going to start with something called the law of identity. The law of identity is from the realm of logic. Now, I will tell you, honestly, I've never been trained in logic. I do know some rules and some principles of logic, but I'm only going to give you the ones that are pretty straightforward. And so here's the law of identity. Look at how difficult this is. The law of identity says A equals A. Now, you know, any kind of equation, whatever is on either side of the equals marks, it has to be even. And so in this case, A equals A. Now let me clear this up. Let me change the terms a little bit, and I'll use myself as an example. And so here's an equation, and I'm going to use the law of identity on it. Joel Smith is equal to the youngest son of Pam Smith. Now, I, the person speaking, and if you're one of my students, you're in my classroom, you know me. I am Joel Smith. That's how I introduce myself each day, and that is my identity. Am I the same person as the youngest son of Pam Smith? Well, you would need some information to be able to figure that out. And of course, you could do it if I just released you and said, hey, figure out if the youngest son of Pam Smith is identical to Joel Smith. Now, if I said the youngest son of Pam Smith here on February 20th, 2019 is 52 years old, is about 5 foot 10 inches, weighs about 170 pounds, has a chin beard, and is going bald on the front and top. If I said that that's what the youngest son of Pam Smith is like, then it's pretty well established that Joel Smith and the youngest son of Pam Smith are identical. They are one and the same. If, however, I said Joel Smith is equal to the youngest son of Pam Smith, and then you found out the youngest son of Pam Smith is actually 25 years old, is 6'5", and is 250 pounds of pure muscle, 10% body fat, full head of blonde flowing hair. If I said that, when I describe the youngest son of Pam Smith, you would know that Joel Smith is not the youngest son of Pam Smith. We would be two different people. Why? It's because we don't have the same identity. Our characteristics are different. If we can find that the characteristics are different on either side of that equals mark, then it fails with the law of identity. And so here's why this matters. Why would I give you such a silly little example? Well, we're going to use the same idea with the brain and the mind, or the body and the soul. And so what we're going to try to demonstrate is that the brain is not the same as the mind. Now, I'm not denying that the brain is used by the mind, but they are not exactly the same thing. There's not a one-to-one correlation. The same with the body and the soul. What some people would call a soul is not merely the body. The two are different. So I'm going to show you with these 6 arguments that the brain and the mind, or the body and the soul, are not the same thing. They violate the law of identity. It's not equal. Okay, now, for those of you in my class, this is where you need to start. Before you give one of these arguments for the existence of the soul, you need to make people understand the law of identity and get them to agree that A needs to equal A. The brain needs to equal the mind if naturalism is true. Naturalism says we can explain everything by natural causes. Everything has a natural cause. I could have also put materialism up there. Materialism would say the same thing, that the brain is the mind, that the body is the soul. And naturalist and materialist would say the way that religions describe it, that that's not what the soul really is. The soul is really just the body. Okay? So, without any further, let's look at the first argument. Now, what I'll do with each one of these arguments is bring up an image and I think a title. I'll explain it, typically by way of an example, and then I'll give you the actual argument. So let's first go with the private knowledge argument. And I'll ask it this way. If I wanted to know what your brain looks like, could I find out without you telling me? And I think you know the answer to that is yes. I could either get I could get an MRI, or I could get some kind of X-ray, or if I was really desperate, I could just crack open your skull and I could look at your brain. I could dig around in your brain and see what your brain looks like, and you wouldn't have to tell me anything about it. You don't have to give me any kind of knowledge for me to know what your brain is like. And so I think we can come to an agreement on that. However, your thoughts are private knowledge. The only way I can truly know your thoughts would be that you have to tell me what your thoughts are. I can't take an MRI or an X-ray or crack into your skull and know what you're thinking. Now, we can look at your brain to see what areas of your brain are firing when you're thinking, but we can't tell what you're thinking unless you let us know. You have to inform us, or we can't know it. And so this is the private knowledge argument. And what I've just demonstrated, at the very least, is that there's a difference between your brain and your thoughts. And so here's the way this argument goes. Physical properties can be publicly known. And that's the brain. Your brain can be publicly known without you telling us anything about it. Now, in the United States, currently, you have to give your consent for people to look at your brain, but it's physical, so you don't have to tell us anything about it. Mental properties like thoughts or emotions, feelings, dreams, mental properties are only privately known. Yes, I could see where there's brain activity when you're thinking or daydreaming or something like that, but I don't know what you're thinking, and I don't know what you're daydreaming about. And let me say this, we'll never know. As long as the Christian view is correct and our soul or our mind is immaterial, we are never going to be able to read people's minds in the way that is sometimes portrayed in science fiction, because mental properties are only privately known. You have to tell me what you're thinking. You have to tell us all what you're thinking before we can really know it. So, therefore, mental properties are not physical properties. Mental properties are not privately known. Physical properties are. So they can't be the same thing. Okay? So that's the first argument for the existence of the soul. Let's try another one. And this is called the first person argument. And here's how it works. And you can see in the image there's a young lady with a toothbrush. And I want you to think about every morning when you go into the bathroom. I hope you do this. Hope you do this at least twice a day. You go into the bathroom and you get the thing that she's holding there between her teeth. And ask yourself this. What do you call it? You'll call it my toothbrush, won't you? You won't say when you pick that thing up, that's me, will you? You'll say, that's my toothbrush. We identify things this way when we use possessive pronouns when it's something we possess, but not when we're talking about ourselves. And so here's the way this one works. Like everyone, I only use first-person possessive pronouns to indicate possession of something other than me. When we talk about things that we own, even when we talk about parts of our body, we usually use first-person possessive pronouns. My toothbrush, my chair, my computer, my arm, my leg, my foot, my hair. But we identify those things in this way because they're not us. They're not our identity. However, like everyone, I commonly use first-person possessive pronouns when describing my body. Again, my arm, my leg, my foot, my whatever. Therefore, my body is something other than me. In other words, if we use first-person possessive pronouns, we're always using them to signify things that are somehow different from us. They're not our identity. They're not us. And since we talk about our bodies with first-person positive pronouns, that signifies that, at least in our minds, our bodies are not us. Our identity is something completely different. Okay, that's the first-person argument. Now, I don't personally find this one compelling. It seems to me that this particular argument is just a way of speaking. But if that one works for you and you think you could be convincing and persuasive with it, then have at it. You can certainly use that one. All right, I think I'm going to stop the video and look at the other four in part 2.